Hello everyone, welcome to Motovlog on my channel. My name is Marshall3498, and today on my channel is going to be motorcycle related as usual, and that topic is dual sport versus ADB. Now, before you start being like whatever, I am riding a dual sport currently, and I've had two adventure bikes prior to having this little Honda 300 LS that I'm riding now. So, I'm going to kind of compare, not spec sheets in this video. I don't really do that on my channel. I kind of talk on my opinion and try to stay away from the specs as much as possible. But what I am going to talk about is my personal experience and my opinion. Although I'm not an expert, but I have owned all bikes. This is not a press video. These are my bikes that I've owned over the past couple years that have had some growing pains on it, trying to figure out what exactly I want out of my adventure or dual sport bike. Number one thing I can say is, for any of you looking to get into this and you don't know what you want, the main thing I'm going to tell you is be honest with yourself. How much percentage are you actually going to use the motorcycle on or off-road? Because that's where I think a lot of it comes to play and a lot of your compromises come in. Like I'll tell you, even though if you go back and look on my channel, I've only had this bike like 6 months. This is my second bike, so I don't need my second bike to do everything my primary or my always street slash touring bike, my Yamaha FJR 1300. Those of you who watch my channel have seen the FJR. Yes, I still have it. It's in the garage and it's used for more, day trips and weekend trips, and I try to use my second bike, this one, for other stuff. So, on to it is, like I said, especially if it's your second bike, it's like a lot of people's instances who have this bike, they, that kind of off-road, ADB, dual sport, whatever you call it, they all usually start out, or at least some of them, as a street bike rider, and they discover this whole, like riding adventure bikes, riding dual sports, BDR, back discovery routes, all this other stuff that you can ride, and they're opened up this world like, this is all mapped out and I can go do this. Look at this idiot riding a dual sport on the street with no helmet on. Well, not even a dual sport, that was a dirt bike. No lights, no signal, no nothing. Anyways, but his brain, not mine. But, the main thing, like I said, be honest with yourself. Are you going 50-50, 50% off-road, 50% on-road, like it's your only bike? Then that complicates things even more. But if it's your second bike and it doesn't have, and you want it to be, well, at one thing or the other, which you're going to use it the best for, what I can tell you is whatever you're going to use it the most for, buy that bike. And I hate to say it, and I hate to, beat a dead horse. Lighter bikes off-road are going to be, especially for new off-road riders, are going to be so much easier to handle at first. They're cheaper, they're lighter. If you happen to crack a piece of little side fairing thing, you can replace, like on these little 300Ls, you can replace all the plastics and even do a color change for like $300. So if you beat the plastics up a little bit or have to buy a piece here or there, it's not going to break the bank. These bikes are easy to work on. You can do so much more of the maintenance yourself because they're simpler. They're basically more or less a dirt bike-ish that's street legal. So there's less stuff to go wrong. They're just built simpler because they're built to be light. So there's no extra fluff on it, except for like maybe ABS and maybe traction control if you get one of the the newer like dual sports like the Suzuki DRS coming out that's replacing DR400. But these bikes are so much lighter, so When the bike moves around, it's going to be easier to catch, less fatiguing, more confidence, expiring, as Dork on the Road always says, but it's true. Um, also, these bikes are cheaper, so if you beat them up a little bit, like I just said, learn to ride them off road and make mistakes, and it's not going to hurt your pride as much as it would a $15,000 KTM 890 when you drop it and it goes sliding down the gravel at 35 miles an hour. Crash bars or not, it's still going to get beat up a little bit. I had a KTM 890, the base model, not the R, and I took it off road for the first time. Bike had like 300 miles on it, which is retarded, but whatever. Down a kind of a little BDR kind of trail that started out gravel, that by the end of it was dirt with rock gardens or baby heads, a lot of you like to call it, towards the end. And it was fun, and I'm glad I did it because I know what to expect, but it was also terrifying to do that on, a $15,000 plus bike that weighs, 450 plus pounds. But, was it fun? Yes. Do I regret doing it? Absolutely not. Would I recommend doing that? Probably not, unless you're, unless you make like 200 grand a year and then you really don't care. And then if you don't care, then buy it and do what you do. But I'm just saying it's easier, cheaper, more cost effective. And I hate to say this because it kind of pains me to say this, but really, if you can't decide which one, it kind of wouldn't hurt to have both. Because, and then as you grow into more of an off-road rider, you can either get a big old dual sport and not so much a beginner one, or keep the beginner one for more like single track stuff, buy kind of a mid-size-ish one and use that for kind of more like an 80-20, 80% on-road, 20% off-road. You could effectively once, you could do most of that stuff on a middleweight ADV. Now, like heavyweight, like, Africa Twin, 500 pounds, 550, 600 pounds, like big BMW GS's, it could still be done. There's some people out there who can still do that. But you're taking a bigger risk tearing up a more expensive motorcycle if it's like your pride and joy and you can't, it just, I don't care what kind of crash bars, what kind of this, what kind of that, unless you wrap the whole thing in 3/4 inch, steel that's going to make it weigh over 1,000 pounds. If something gets dropped, it's going to get messed up. Now, if it falls in grass or gravel, maybe not that bad, but if it falls on a ginormous rock, like back there in that people's yard, enter at your own risk is basically what I'm trying to say. Both are great at stuff. I mean, like, it depends on the dual sport you get. Now we got an ATV on the road. I can tell it's, getting close to winter time and Christmas time because people's kind of care is going out the window. But, this little Honda 300 LS that I'm riding, is it great on the road? Yeah, it's not terrible. Is it wonderful at speeds above like 60, 65? No. So much stuff of what makes these little adventure I'm confusing myself. So much of what makes these little dual sport bikes so great off-road hurts them on the road. And it's really hard to find a bike that does both 50-50. Some kind of are on the road, and then some are better off-road. A bigger dual sport that's a little bit heavier, like a DR650 that's like 350, that weighs 40 or 50 pounds more than this, might be a little bit better on the road, and it has more power, and it weighs just a little bit more without going over 400 pounds. It would probably make a better road bike, if I'm being honest, and still be pretty decent off-road, and not pay too much of a weight penalty. If you wanted to stay in the dual sport realm at the time of recording this in 2024, that probably wouldn't be a terrible option. Even though I hate to say it, but even like a 690 KTM or Husqvarna 701, that's another kind of hybrid bike that is really off-road based, but will do road miles better than a smaller dual sport because it's more power, stuff like that. It is heavy, but not over 400 pounds. It's still like 360, I believe, something like that. So, that's another option if you wanted to stay in the dual sport thing because of the advantages, that you ride off-road more. That is something that you could do. There's so many choices, so many options out there. It's kind of ridiculous, and that's not a bad thing to have a lot of motorcycle choices, but it can be a difficult one thing to make your mind up for one for the other. So you might be like me. Those of you who watch my channel for a little bit, I bought a Gen 3 2022. Yeah, 2022 KLR 650. Rode it for 8-9 months and decided to me it was a little bit even though it's a pretty decent hybrid bike, it speeds like above 65 because it only being a single cylinder and only a 5-speed. The vibrations to me, but I come from like a 4-cylinder motorcycle FJR that are super smooth. To me, the vibrations above 65 were terrible. Like I thought something, I was like, why is this thing shaking so much? And then you slow down to like 60 and it goes away. Of course, you could gear it up like one tooth or whatever in the back or the front, whichever. I forget how that works. And solve a lot of that. But then off-road, it's going to be, off-road, you're going to be like, fighting between that, first gear is too fast for some stuff, and second gear is too slow, and then you end up, being in third sometimes, and then going from third to first, and then your speedometer's never going to be right. I mean, if you have the bike and put 30,000 miles on it, you're not really going to care. But if you have the bike for the first couple of years and however that speedometer thing goes, whether it makes it more or less, it's not going to be accurate either way you go if you geared down or geared up. A lot of new modern bikes, especially ones with ABS, the wheel speed sensor thing is on the back instead of the front. I don't know. I forget some of that stuff, but it screws your speedometer up pretty much any way you look at it. Of course, you got a speedo healer that can maybe solve some of that. Blah blah blah. But all I'm saying is, you can adapt a lot of bikes for your liking, but there's always going to be a compromise with everything. And it's the same thing between a dual sport and adventure bike, or a lighter dual sport or heavier dual sport. You're never going to have the right answer. It's always going to be compromises. It's not like street riding where you have sport touring or like a cruiser where it's like, oh, this is a great bike, but I need a little more power, so you get something a little bigger. It's not really that simple, unfortunately. I've owned, like I said, this is my third bike, and this is probably where, for the whole, off-road thing that I should have just started out on, a inexpensive, light, little dual sport that you can learn on for a couple of years, sell it. You'll lose a couple thousand on these little Hondas. You can put 10,000-15,000 miles on it, be 2 years old, still sell it in the US, United States, probably for between 4,000 and 5,000, but you only pay it out the door like it depends on your tax bracket, your sales tax, like 7. So you lost $2,000, but got to enjoy the bike for 2 years. So it cost you $1,000 a year. It's not too bad a math to lose, really, to be honest. It's not like buying a $25,000 GS and having it for 5 years and putting 35,000 miles on it, and then like 10 years later losing $10,000 or something. It's not the same, because the bikes themselves aren't expensive, so that gap is less from the get-go. But I got for today's motovlog. Sorry to get a little long-winded, but it's a long discussion that doesn't really have a great answer, unfortunately. You just have to pick your poison, go what you feel right, and if it's not, best advice I can say to you, maybe those who are trying that, if you can, find one used and like barely used, like less than 1,000 miles on it, and do that. It's a cheaper buy-in, and then if there's something you don't like about it that you just can't deal without and you have to sell it, then you won't lose as as much money. Ask me how I know. But on that, guys, if you're not already done so, please like, share, subscribe, ride safe, and we'll see you on the next one. See ya.